Ever wonder if your walls could talk, what they would tell you about the previous owners? Welcome, everyone, to Daydreaming in the Life Artois. Tales of a summer worth savoring. Today's tale takes us to the rolling hills of San Francisco, where Victorian houses are just as intricate as the stories behind them, and where two gentlemen wonder just how long they can keep a secret about the house they last lived in. Now close your eyes and prepare your mind to be transported to the Life Artois. DiscoBall by Glenn David Gould. This is a true story as stories about San Francisco can be. Every time the city gives up a secret, it creates a dozen more. On Telegraph Hill, there's a stub of a street 2 houses deep. You won't find it easily, as its geography means it's not on most maps. The occupants could fix this, but as to why they don't, they can see Lombard Street from here, and yet the street is so obscure they can always find parking. So, shh. One house is an old apartment building, just studios and 1 bedrooms. The place is on its way to being a ruin, but in the way San Franciscans most enjoy. It's a picturesque ruin. The other house is an architectural masterpiece. Design students from around the world tour it, courtesy of its owners, a pair of gentlemen who say they've lived here since once upon a time, by which they mean the 1970s. When they tell the visitors what the 1970s were like on their street, they make it sound like all the men were pirates and all the women had ironed hair, mood rings, and chapbooks of their own poetry. The parties began at 5 o'clock and lasted till 1978. Now, there's less evidence of those times in the masterpiece house than in the apartment building. Most units are tiny and dark, but they have wraparound balconies with magnificent views of boats on the bay, a bridge or two, the fishermen at the piers. Flocks of parrots race down to the ferry building in the morning and back up the hillside before dusk. Summers are legendarily warm here, conducive to parties on the many decks overhanging the bay. At night, out come the hanging colored lights, the playlists overfilled with 30s tango music, and the takeout containers from the worst diners in Chinatown. The first thing a new occupant learns from the other tenants is never bring a first date back here unless you want them to never, ever leave. And what of the other house, the magnificent one that over the years has become quieter? It's a showpiece inside, too, designed thoughtfully with just enough space balanced with just enough art that it provides a kind of alchemy for elegant living. There are books in every room, and the books are always arranged by color. On the top floor is a tiny bar with 2 stools, and on them every night are the 2 gentlemen owners. With the regulated accuracy of a ship's chronometer, at 5 o'clock, pail-covered caps spring from 2 bottles of Stella Artois, and they toast their view. By that, they mean their view of the apartment building beside them, the balconies, the tenants. The first secret is that they used to live there themselves, and they used to look at this very house and wonder what it would be like to live in this masterpiece. The next secret is that their deepest joy comes from watching their neighbors' parties, their intrigues on the balconies, and then making judgments of how it will all pan out in the future. Which couple now locking eyes will still be sweet on each other in 40 years when the seas have risen past the jetty walls? Who will be a cipher in 6 months? A misspelled name on a text thread someone remembered more for the color of her lipstick than what dream she haltingly revealed. The gentlemen who own the masterpiece are on her side, on the side of anyone who dreams here, because San Francisco itself is so fickle with dreams. San Francisco is your handsome, if inconsistent, best friend. San Francisco is always just about to get its act together and do you proud and maybe return one of your texts. And then sometimes you manage to move from a rundown apartment building and into the marvel next door, like the men who know it's only right to acknowledge this fact when they toast. every 5 o'clock. Now the final secret. When they moved in, the house needed some attention and some light renovation. The original architect was beloved, and his plans were preserved in an archive in Brussels. When the new owners saw the blueprints, they were amazed. Their house wasn't just attached to the hillside with the visible pilings. The street was cantilevered over a small natural cave. Behind a decorative wall in their basement was space that no one else still alive even knew about. In any long-term relationship, there's one person whose job it is to be the instigator, to put hands on hips, to do some chin stroking, and when looking at one particular decorative wall in the basement, say, "What if?" And the other person's job is to look at the balance sheet, evaluate the tools and skill set at hand, consider who would bail them out of jail if they went through with this, and then, with love, make the commitment. Yes, they agreed. Let's do this. Which is how these two gentlemen opened the wall, poured a floor in the cave, shored up a roof, added theatrical lighting, a sound system, and from an auction of a closed beatnik-era tavern, a long bar with working taps. The final furnishing was a genuine mirror ball. And this is how the secret Telegraph Hill underground discotheque came to be. For many years, early in the morning when the other clubs had closed, if you went to walk your dog along a certain street, you might hear an excited beat echoing from a sewer grate or maybe a manhole cover. Strange, hard to place, but danceable music. And was that cheering and laughter accompanying it? It was hard to tell, ghostly, never proven. But it is the nature of time to move on. With enough experience, change, even the melancholy kind, becomes beautiful. The nights turned into days and weeks, and then years. And many of their friends left for happy or for sad reasons. They attended their personal secret disco, only to fetch the Stellas, no longer to dance. One of the gentlemen, it would be rude to say which one, became 90 years old, and he felt it was time to leave the house to the next generation. There was a new couple moving in, and of course, tales of real estate in San Francisco so rarely have a happy outcome. But this couple knew the street well. They knew the history and they knew the artwork on the walls, and they said they hoped the gentleman who owned it would consider them custodians of the place, caretakers of something that would live beyond them. But as to the disco, the gentleman didn't even tell the new owners about it. It was a legal hazard, 10 times worse than a spiral staircase. Permitted? Not even the San Francisco Planning Department would permit such a thing. So the careful one in the relationship, the superego of the two, made arrangements to have it walled back up. That was when he learned that his partner, the instigator, had other ideas. On the day they were to leave, the two of them stood alone at 5 o'clock in the place they always knew would be their final vista in this house. In this matchless, lovely, happy, maddening city, overlooking their neighbor's apartment building and having one final toast. "It is too bad," said one, the more level-headed of the two, "that we couldn't tell them about the disco." Which is when the other smiled. "They'll find it eventually. I left a clue." He was the type of person who loved to be asked more, but his friend knew well that they still had the rest of their lives for questions and answers. So they left the house forever, where it stands empty as of now, but only for a brief time. When the new couple moves in, guardians and custodians of a legendary place, they will take their time getting to know the quirks, the joys, the sticky button on the oven, the bathroom doorknob that seems too loose. And one day, one of them will notice the wall in the basement, surprisingly new, completely flawless, except for one loose brick. It'll take standing on a ladder and a little tug, but the brick will pop out, and then In the otherwise dark and silent room will come a spangle of glittering, dancing white flecks. Light coming from a secret equator, eternal hemispheres, the past and the future. One more mystery to solve, one more secret to keep. Open your eyes and welcome back. We hope you enjoyed this week's summer tale. Now allow yourself one more indulgence as you get ready for the weekend. An ice-cold Stella Artois. Meet here again next week for another daydream in the Life Artois. Go to my Instagram account now, @BravoAndy, for a special happy hour on Instagram Live, where I'll be talking to the author of this week's story and taking questions from all of you. Don't forget to grab a Stella. See you in a few minutes.